Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. This is your host, Idjester. This will be part 3 of Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. This time we're going to be looking at the Russian side. The Russian side is quite different than the German side, so it deserves its own video. So let's go ahead and start up a scenario here. So as I've been mentioning throughout the series, the Germans and the Russians do play very different, and that's based upon the actual way the game uses the different sides. So we're going to switch this over to Soviets here as human, and we'll just put German as the AI. And again, we're going to leave everything as default just for ease of getting into the scenario, just to show you what's going on. So as this brings it up, I should mention that you are, when you're playing the Russian side, you are actually playing as Joseph Stalin here. So again, we're going to get into this pre-game start turn, and let's go ahead and click on that. And you can see it just tells us we're in a special pre-start turn. Battle is yet to commence. It would be wise to report into Stalin decides. But of course, you can again just ignore the RPG element that's built into this game and kind of just forego that and get right on to the maneuvering and battle part if you want. So here we are. Again, highly recommend, if you haven't watched any of the previous episodes, you definitely spend a few minutes going through the tutorials. They are quite good, and they will give you a lot of information. Again, this is not a tutorial or a let's play. This is a video series just to give you the background and the information on how things operate, so you can kind of understand more about the game. So as I mentioned, you are Joseph Stalin. Unlike the German side, who actually is one of the field commanders, you are the head boss. You are the military dictator of Russia. That has its advantages and its disadvantages, and these are all built into the game mechanics. Well, what's one of the disadvantages of being a military dictator? Well, the main problem with a military dictator is they usually rise up in power by militarily taking things over. And so, since they've done it, they realize that anyone else out there can do the same thing. So, as Joseph Stalin, you have to really make some decisions on what kind of personnel you're going to have around you. Of course, a lot of dictators like to keep around just yes sir men and people that are very incompetent, because you don't feel threatened in that regard. You know that all these people around you are just babbling idiots, and they can't think for themselves without you there. On the other hand, you could hire some very competent, some great generals with great ideas, great foresight. But of course, you have to start thinking, what if these guys start getting some power? What if they want to take over like I did? And so, as Joseph Stalin, you have much reservations with having any dedicated and decent people around you. So in that case, most people that are around you are just what we said before, babbling idiots. They are not competent generals. They have not studied war. They're very timid, very shy. They don't think for themselves. You basically have to do all the thinking. You have to do everything. So as Joseph Stalin, we have what we call our paranoia level. If we actually click on this, we can get some information about Joseph Stalin here. But we're going to be monitoring, and the better people that you surround yourself with, it helps your army, and it helps you defeat the Germans, helps you secure the motherland, as they say. But as you do this, as you hire better and more competent people for your army, your paranoia level rises and rises, and sooner or later you have a paranoid episode. And everything can go backwards at that point once you feel that you are being threatened by those that are supposed to be helping you and your country. So unlike the German side, you're the boss. You don't report to anyone. Unlike the German side, who's going to be reporting in to Adolf Hitler and has a bunch of relationships. As the Russians, you don't have relationships. You are the boss. You are in charge. Whatever you say happens. There aren't no questions. There aren't any debates. Whatever you want to have happen, happens. You don't have relationships with other sides. Again, that can have some very good effects, but of course it can also be have some very adverse effects as well, because that can lead you to more paranoia because you feel like you're being more isolated and restricted and feel like you are alone because you don't have anyone else out there like yourself. So just like the German side, and as the message we saw when we first got in the game, the first thing you should probably look at is, of course, your reports menu. And as we mentioned during the German side, the Russians don't have as many decisions to make. You can see the list is quite shorter on this side. They do have some very interesting decisions to make. Doesn't mean that they're not interesting. You just have fewer decisions to make because you are the supreme leader. You don't need to check in with anyone else. So the most important decision you're going to make is this one, of course. Stalin decides. So just like the German side, we have the Russian side, and basically you have to decide as the supreme commander what is the most important thing that you need to protect. And of course, the same goals that the German side has, you are also going to have. Are you going to save Leningrad? Are you going to save Moscow? Or are you going to save Rostov? So you can see that the combination of how the German side and their dictations of what they wish to do can be quite different than the choices that the Russians make. For example, you can have one scenario in which, as we were playing as Germany, we noticed that we supported Hitler, and Hitler's decision was to go for Leningrad #1 priority. Well, of course, we don't have any knowledge of what Joseph Stalin and the Russians did, but that was what Hitler's decision was. And you can see that if the Russian side was to also say choose save Stalingrad, you would have the German side pushing towards Stalingrad super hard, and of course you would have the Russian side trying to protect that at all costs. And it would be quite a different game than if, say, the Russian side chose save Rostov. So in our playthrough as the Germans, we were pushing on Leningrad. If you, as Joseph Stalin, decide to save Rostov, that game is going to be quite different than if you choose to save Leningrad. So again, the same three main objectives you have to choose. And of course, as Russians, we don't know what the German side is going to do because every time is going to be completely different. Notice we have 0 political points. Again, we don't have political points. We don't have very many important. We don't have any decisions that are going to cost political points, and of course you see all these cost 0 political points. So just to make things interesting, I would choose save Leningrad, and of course you have different objective choices here to kind of give you an overview of what these decisions are going to do. And you can see here kind of a breakdown of them. Let's go back in and make a decision here. So again, as I mentioned, there's only one campaign in this game. Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. There's only one campaign, but this campaign is going to play out quite different just by what we talked about here in having the different decisions If the German side chose, say, attack Moscow, and the Russian side decided to save Moscow, you're going to have quite a battle there in the center, and the other fronts will be kind of not as important. And of course, if we chose to save Leningrad and Germany was going after Rostov, it would be quite a different game because we're trying to save Leningrad. The Germans probably aren't going to be pushing as hard towards Leningrad because that wasn't Hitler's main objective, because one game he decided to go towards Rostov. So it's going to be quite interesting how all these decisions play out for you and make everything quite different. But just for sakes here, I'm just going to choose save Leningrad. Unlike the German side, when you're making some of the decisions, it might make it easier or harder. You notice that none of the decisions here are actually going to make it any easier or harder by giving you victory points or taking away victory points or anything like that. It's just a decision you make, and the decision you make and the Germans' decisions will kind of dictate the flow of the game. So we're just going to choose save Leningrad. There we go. Orders have been issued that Leningrad is to be held at all costs. Thank you very much. We'll get a couple more decisions, of course. What if Finland? So let's talk a little bit about some of these other decisions we have. Again, we don't have any political points. These aren't going to cost us any political points. So we can threaten an invasion with them. You can see that these decisions are going to choose and alter our victory points, though, unlike the previous one. You can see that we're going to counter the German efforts and prevent a Finnish offensive, but we do lose 10 victory points if we choose this option. We can threaten consequences, so it halves our chance for a Finnish offensive, but we do lose 5 victory points, and we have the choice to just maintain status quo. Of course, none of these cost political points, but some of these decisions might, again, lose you some victory points. So again, let's just say we're going to threaten an invasion with Finland up there. We are going to lose 10 victory points, but we are going to make that decision. And you can see by what we talked about in the German campaign, if the German campaign, or if the German player was, or the computer AI was playing for the Germans, and they chose that option for Finland to invade Russia to get those extra attacks against Russia at the time, you can see that based on our decision where we're threatening them, they're threatening us, that can play out quite differently. If the AI chooses more of a passive role up here for the Finland, and the Russian player chooses more of a passive role, that is going to totally change the war efforts and the outcome and how the scenario is going to play out. So let's go back and look at our other decisions. What if Purge? So we have some more decisions here about our the purging of what we talked about before. All of these officers that we feel are too impressive, they're too good. We are paranoid that they might rise up against us. People might start following them. So we can take a look at what decisions we have here. Okay, so we can release a large number of the officers. So our army cadet initiative is going to be at plus 20. But of course, it's going to cost us 10 victory points. All army commander initiatives plus 10 at the cost of minus 5 victory points, and we can maintain this status quo. So one thing we didn't talk about was the army commander's initiative. Basically, that dictates the chance for that army to activate each turn. So obviously, with a higher initiative, that is going to give you a better chance for each of these armies to activate. But of course, better chance of activation each turn is offset by, of course, losing some victory points. and this one's kind of a medium one where you're taking a little bit of an initiative boost, but you're only losing 5 victory points. So we're going to take that decision. All right. And we have another decision here. The Stalin line is in poor condition, comrade. Most of our fortification efforts have been channeled into constructing the Molotov line further west, although it is still a work in progress, and that's essential, such as steel, access doors, and bunkers, etc., etc. So we can spend time trying to reinforce these, of course, at a cost of 10 victory points. We can try to reactivate them for, again, loss of 10 victory points. Or we can, we can do it to the north, the central, or the south there. That's going to be the difference. And of course, if we're trying to protect, say, Leningrad in the north, probably what we'd want to do is issue our edict here to get a better protection on the northern front. If we were trying to protect, say, Moscow, we might want to reactivate the central front. And of course, if we're trying to protect Rostov, we might want to do that. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to, but of course, there's always the option to maintain the status quo if you don't want to lose more victory points. In this case, since we're protecting Leningrad to the north, our northern front, we're going to lose 10 victory points, but we are going to get quite a bonus to being able to defend that sector. Actually, they call them fronts on the Russian side. And last but not least, something the Germans obviously didn't have to worry about, but of course, as Russia, they do have to worry about. What if Japan? So we do have to worry about whether or not Japan is going to attack the east front of Russia over there. So we can decide to, you know what? I don't think they're going to attack, so we're going to release that army from the east. It's going to arrive in 20 turns, earlier than normal, and of course we're going to lose 10 victory points. So we're kind of hedging our bet that Japan won't attack us. We're going to move all of our armies from the far east back over to this side to help us, and they're going to arrive 20 turns earlier than they normally would. Of course, we can do that same thing, but only in 10 turns and lose 5 victory points. And we can say, you know what? We're not going to have them come at all. We're going to keep them on the east front, and we're going to actually gain 5 victory points because we're not going to have these reinforcements come. So again, you can see what a wonderful design this is in really trying to make each and every game and each scenario time that you play the scenario very different, because as the German player, one time you might be plowing through Russia and then all of a sudden a bunch of units show up earlier than expected. Another time you could be plowing through Russia and no units arrive, and it can make the game very, very different. For right now, we're actually going to leave the Siberian army in the Far East, and we'll gain some of those victory points that we spent earlier back away. Alright, so that's all of our decisions. Again, we don't have as many decisions. They are just as important, and these decisions and how the AI as the German player will really dictate the flow of the scenario and really make each and every playthrough a new and unique experience. One thing we should talk about here is our officer unit. Where are they? Where are they? That's a good question. Alright, one thing I should mention, when you play the Russian player, you actually have yourself as a counter here in Moscow. You can see that this counter represents us as Joseph Stalin, and also you can see that some of our main generals and such have a counter as well. Here's Marshal I know how to say this. I know I didn't even say his name. Timoshenko. There we go. Couldn't think of it for a second. Apologize for that. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put the game on pause. Just let the Germans take their first turn and show you some more stuff after the first turn has been completed. But sometimes it could take a few minutes, so I'm not going to just just put the game on a quick pause for you guys, and we'll be right back. Alright, so the first turn has commenced, and you can see that we have breaking news here. Brest-Lewisk has fallen to the invading Huns. Paranoid increased by +10. So we are now becoming more and more paranoid. So we'll go ahead and press on here. And you can see that we now have a few other options here we haven't talked about. We have Kukov and Khrushchev there, and those two fellas are going to be rather important here. And you can see a war summary report and what had happened during the turn when the Germans attacked, and you can see what is going on here. So initiative and threat are the two things we're going to be dealing with. Initiative and threat. Of course, initiative is how likely their armies are going to be to activate during each of the turns, and threat level is their our view of them as Joseph Stalin. So as you can see, -13 threat. I don't think that this guy is very he's not going to try to take over my position. He's not competent enough. He's just, he's not very threatening. Timoshenko here, you see he's only a -8, and that's because he's an old war buddy of ours. And again, you'll see a lot of these war buddies in the beginning of the game here. You can see some activations here. 0 armies activated out of 0. 7 didn't. 2 armies activated, 1 partially. 3 armies activated, 2 partially, 2 didn't. 4 armies are on offensive posture, 3 neutral. 4 armies on offensive posture, and 4 armies on offensive posture, 3 are neutral. So yes, our brand great idea that we have no control over, obviously, was that Joseph Stalin felt that we are going to, once Germany attacks, which we were not prepared for at all, we have none the training, we don't have the command structure, we don't have anything going in our favor, but for some reason, in our own delusional mind, we kept all of our armies on an offensive posture because we felt like we would repel their attacks and immediately strike back at them and push them back all the way to Berlin immediately. So all of our armies start at the offensive posture as opposed to a defensive posture. So that's going to be quite hard to overcome our own incompetence there as well. Alright, so now, most importantly, now that the first turn is over for the Germans, you can see what had happened here. They're, of course, pushing us back. They're taking the initiative. They do get quite a bonus for the first couple turns. So our job is obviously to rectify all of these problems that we have to deal with as the Russian side. But what I mainly want to focus in on, not so much on the combat and such, that might come in another video, but more along the lines of the RPG element and what our command structure looks like at the time of our first start. We don't actually get this menu until after the Germans' turn. So of course you can see us here as Joseph Stalin. Our paranoid level, of course, we have to monitor and keep track of this, keep this as low as possible. Of course, we have a tool tip up there. Effect of front marshals -30, effect on army commanders -10, loss of a politically important city +10, so that equals a 0, which is our minimum value. So you can see right now we're not very threatened by a lot of the generals we have in, and that's mostly because they are old buddies of ours and people that are very incompetent. So we have 2 war buddies and this guy, which is incredibly incompetent. Now, unlike the German side, we can actually get in and get rid of any of our commanders that we wish, and replace them with someone else that might be better suited to the situation, have better stats. But of course, if they're going to have a better initiative level, they're going to have a very high threat level as well. which of course will send our paranoia level up. So we have a northern front commander, we have a central front commander, and of course a southern front commander. And you can see right now that these guys, Timoshenko, Vorsosolov, and Budeni, are front commanders. And then we have two other very important individuals, of course. That's Khrushchev and Khrushchev. Khrushchev? Something like that. Anyways, I should know how to say these names. Apologize. But anyways, these guys are basically our troubleshooters. These guys are loyal. Notice that we have no initiative and no threat with these guys, because these are our loyal people that stand behind us. We don't feel threatened by them. We know that these are good for us. They're good for our motherland. They're good for everything. And we basically can send these guys out as our defensive troubleshooters to keep everyone else in line and get them with the program and make sure that they operate at full efficiency. So we can assign each one of our Khrushchev here. We can assign him to any one of our different headquarter units, and those units will receive a bonus. Same thing with Khrushchev, who, of course, these guys are labeled as our troubleshooters. So if we feel that one of our armies is not living up to snuff, if one of our commanders, if actually we click on a, oops, there we go. You can see our different generals here. In this case, I just happened to click on this one. We do have quite a bit. If you actually go up to the order of battle here, you can see the organizational structure. Of course, unlike the German side, we only have one main headquarters, and then of course from there it's broken down even further. This general here, you can see, is General V.I. Morovas. And of course, you know, a little bit of more information about him. Initiative value. Notice he's actually giving us a plus value in initiative, so his army has a chance of activating +5 each turn. But notice his his initiative, yeah, is +5. His threat level, notice, is -2. Unlike some of the other guys, which have got quite a bit more, or quite a bit less threat level for us. So, that's how that is all going to play out. We're going to actually be spending some time, and I should mention that both of our troubleshooters here will have their own set of cards that they will use with the army that they are associated with. So, you know, they are kind of going to be our frontline guys that we're going to send down and get them with the program, get these armies reorganized, get a nice defensive line going. Of course, the Germans are going to start off with a great advantage because, you know, Russia, we weren't prepared for the attack. We didn't have the command, the structure. We didn't have the training. We didn't have the supplies. We didn't have the equipment. And we overconfident in our abilities to be able to repel the Germans. So now that we realize that there is a situation going on and that we need to send our troubleshooters up there to get things squared away. So that's basically what these guys are going to do. And of course, like I mentioned, we can worry about getting some of our other commanders. If we click on this, see we have Major General D.K. Globovev. And of course, we can look at his stats here. Initiative is 25 and -1 threat. So he's a little bit better there with the initiative. We got this guy here. Oh, now look at this guy. Major General A.A. Korobov. He's a 54 initiative. Very nice score to be able to activate. But of course, he's starting to be a little more threatening to us. So we have to, you know, if we try to, we might feel a little bit more threatened by this general than someone else. So a lot of good information is the Germans, and obviously, as I mentioned, is going to play quite differently. You're going to be, of course, trying to fend off and defeat the Germans, and there's many ways to be able to do that, and with different bonuses and different combat structure. Once you get, you're going to be getting some reinforcements, and hopefully you can get your units into better positions and keep your paranoid level under wraps. And every time you're going to play this game, Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa, it's going to play out different based upon the people that you put into power, the different choices, the different reports, the different choices you make, and it's going to make it very, very interesting. So even if you're not a wargamer, if you are just a kind of a light wargamer, and you look at this game with all the counters and everything and think it's overwhelming and it's just too much, the fun thing is you can pick this up, have a lot of fun, and just playing with the different elements in the background, all of the RPG, interesting parts of what's going on behind the scenes, and then get to also move some counters around and see how well you can do. And every time it's going to play different. Sometimes you're going to make the right decisions and it's going to be a little bit easier, and sometimes you're going to make the wrong decisions and it's going to make it a little tougher. But I think it's definitely different than a lot of the other war game counter mixes out there. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.